Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we have with us Usman Raza. He's a doctor, a Fulbright scholar, a Harvard graduate, and also a Berkeley graduate. So let's see what he has to share with us today. So welcome Usman. Can you share something about yourself and how you came to the product management field?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Surya, for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm happy to speak with the audience. I will start by saying that for all the people who are listening, my entry into the tech industry has been rather unconventional. And what I mean is, I started my career as a physician and I completed my residency. And after that, I trained in health policy and management at Harvard. And after that, I spent a good 7 years doing public health work in Pakistan and abroad. But in those 7 years, I have spent significant amount of time leading digital transformation of various information systems for private companies and for government department as well. And at some point, then around 2016, I finally decided that I really wanted to get into the tech industry, and that's when I decided to take a leap of faith, and I quit my very well-paying senior position in public health, and I came here to Berkeley to study the master's in information management program. And since then, I've been working in the Bay Area with various startups that are bringing game-changing innovations to the world of healthcare, and that's exactly where I want to be. And so, for any aspiring product managers who are listening to this cast right now, I will say when I joined the information systems program at Berkeley, I really did not know that I was going to do product management. I just knew I wanted to build products and digital products for healthcare. But I also liked a lot of different aspects of those of that work. And eventually, I figured product management is the kind of role that is at the intersection of so many different aspects of building the product, and it's both exciting and challenging. And so that's where I ended up going.
Thank you, Usman. Can you share how a typical day looks like for you?
Sure, and I think I will answer this question in two parts. First, as an early career product manager, the kind of work that is happening on the day to day basis is more around managing the routine processes. So a lot of you must have heard of the Scrum methods, Agile methods, all these things. So in my early career in product management, a lot of my time was spent in daily stand-ups with different teams, leading tactical discussions almost every day or few times a week with sometimes with engineers, sometimes with designers, lots of meetings with different stakeholders, and writing user stories, taking care of the backlog in Jira, for example, and taking care of other Scrum ceremonies like the sprint planning and sprint review, backlog grooming, all of those things. Um, and then that's kind of like the what I would call as the delivery related part of product management. But there's also an even more significant part, which is around discovery. So a lot of my time was also spent in either talking to customers or users directly, or indirectly looking at their feedback, which is coming through various channels or means, or sometimes doing data analytics to understand user behavior and trying to glean meaning from that and what that means for product improvement. And for I think I'll say for any product manager, there's always some amount of time that goes into dealing with bugs and issues that come up, and it's a little bit unpredictable. On any given day, you may wake up to a fire drill, and then something's gone wrong in the production environment, and you have to rally everybody to take care of that as quickly as possible. So once in a while, those kind of things happen. As I said, there are two parts to this answer. The second part is once you move into a slightly more senior role, then you're likely to be engaged more in things like planning roadmaps, developing roadmaps, and driving cross-functional alignments. And what does that look like? Usually, um, if I give you some recent examples from my own work, where I was working on products that are FDA approved digital therapeutics, there are many stakeholders who need to be aligned on the changes that we're making to the product. And that can be everybody from marketing, sales, engineering, design, clinical team, regulatory team, information security, legal, and few more. So getting all of those people to align, it takes a significant amount of time, and it's a lot of conversation. It's a lot of alignment, uh, back and forth feedback, and understanding that the product manager has to bring everybody to one page. And then even further up, product manager, as a product senior product leader, I've been more and more engaged in strategy work. So thinking more long term, where is our product going? How does the work that we do, how does it connect to the business goals? What kind of metrics or OKRs, they call it OKRs, do we care about? And making sure that the roadmaps and the product strategy are aligned with the business goals. And then now that's more nebulous kind of work, but it manifests as reading documents, understanding what the business strategy is, talking to different functions, being very close to sales and marketing, and so on. So there's a lot of variety, I would say, and that's what's interesting and exciting for me about product management work.
Thank you, Usman. So, can you tell us something about a memorable project that you worked on?
There have been very interesting projects that I've worked on. Perhaps I'll pick one example from one of the companies that I worked at, and this is the company is called HealthTap, and they have an amazing product, which is a software chatbot, uh, which is a symptom assessment and triage tool. So it works like this: you enter any symptoms that you're experiencing. It will ask you some more questions and try to refine the details of that input, and then it will come up with a list of possible conditions that might be causing those symptoms, and then it suggests appropriate level of care to the patients. Now, this is a the model is based on some kind of Bayesian uh, network, or Bayesian model, which actually is based on how likely different conditions are based on certain symptoms. Uh, However, measuring the accuracy of this kind of model is a very difficult task. So one of the projects that I worked on when I joined HealthTap was uh, we have this product. It is doing its job, but how do we know that the output is actually good enough? So because this in this case, it's very difficult to find good data that is labeled. The way I approached this was a little bit different. So what I did was I came up with a feature whereby we would present the same set of symptoms that the AI model was receiving from users to real human physicians, and they were of course not shown what the AI model answered, but they were asked, "What do you think is the top diagnosis and the second most common, and other?" So that getting that UI to be good enough so that physicians can understand the case quickly and respond to that. And then getting a lot of data from the physicians was a challenging piece of work that I did. And during the time that I was working there with the chief medical officer, Jeff Rutledge, who's an amazing person that I got an opportunity to work with, we were able to collect over 200,000 data points from physicians, and then we could actually see, for a given set of symptoms, this is what 20 physicians have a consensus on as a particular diagnosis that they think would be the top diagnosis, and we can compare whether our model is producing that result or not. So I think that was a very interesting and innovative project, and very few people around the globe are doing that kind of work.
Okay. Uh, Thank you, Usman. So, what about a challenging project? So, you spoke about a memorable project. What about a project that challenged you a lot?
So I, here's so let me pick something which is not related to software products. Um, and I think that this is actually more challenging in all the projects that I've done so far. Before I was a product manager, when I earlier mentioned as I was working as a public health professional, one of the very big projects that I was responsible for was introduction of injectable polio vaccine in the northern parts of Pakistan. And this project was extremely challenging because of the logistics involved, the human resource needed, and the resistance of the public to a new intervention that we had to overcome. And there were lots of parts to this. So I had to not only worry about hiring the right kind of people in these far off areas. And so we're talking about areas that are at the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan, and then in the northwest part. These are tribal areas, not very well educated in general, the population. And so we had to find people who were from that area, so they understood the place and they could work there. But they were also well educated enough that they could work and understand our project complexities. And so that was just one of the challenges. Then there were so many logistic challenges. So, vaccines have to be kept at a certain temperature, and many of these places there was no electricity. So we had to worry about things like how much ice do we need to put in the truck, so that when it reaches after 5 hours to that destination point, there's enough that the vaccine cold chain is maintained, and it's useful for the people who are going to get it. And then there's a social aspect of it. As I mentioned, the public is generally going to be resistant to anything new. So we had to work with the local community. So my approach was not to just go and announce, hey, there's this new thing and you should give it to your kids. And no, that's not how it works. So we went to the local influencers or influentials in the villages. These are usually people who are senior leaders, or they may be religious leaders. So we go talk to them and first try to convince them. And once we have their blessing, then we can do our job very easily and smoothly. This was a multi-year project, an ongoing project. We vaccinated about 220,000 kids during the time that I was leading this project. And it was funded by the Gates Foundation. And so I think that was one of the most challenging things that I've undertaken.
Wow, that's an amazing project, and the experience would have been tremendous. So, I think many of the my viewers they wanted to understand how a product manager works and what are the day-to-day tools that a product manager uses for his work. So, can you share some insights in this regard?
Yeah, so Surya, as I mentioned earlier, the typical activities that go on in the day of a product manager, there are different tools that people use for those activities. And in my experience, one of the most common tools is Jira. And that's because a lot of startups and other companies, they use Jira to define the work for product development. And beyond that, there's a variety of tools for different things. So how do you want to, excuse me, how do you want to write down your product specifications? Anything is good enough. I think a Google Doc is fine as well. but I've personally found Confluence to be very useful because it's integrated with Jira. So if your team is using Jira, using Confluence makes it a lot easier to integrate the two, and you can link tickets and a lot of other efficiencies you gain from using the same suite of tools. Then, other things like spreadsheets or SQL tools, these depend on the particular need at the moment that you're working on. So if you need to do some quick analysis, maybe you can do it in some SQL tool or a spreadsheet. And if you are also looking at product metrics every day, then it depends on whatever analytics tool the company is using. I've used Tableau, I've used Sisense, but there are many others I know that are on the market. And there are other tools like Pendo, for example, or Google Analytics. If you're tracking user behavior within the apps or within web pages, those are very useful tools. And then I think one thing I'll mention here is these are all the tools that relate to the work of product managers, as in product management work. Then there are some tools that I personally use for my personal productivity. And at the moment, there are basically two tools that I use. One is Google Calendar. I think it's a kind of an obvious thing. Probably most people use it. The second is an app called Todoist. This is an app which allows you to create sophisticated to-do lists, categorize them, have reminders. It has a two-way integration with Google Calendar. Mind you, I have tried so many different productivity apps over the years, but this is the one that I've stuck with for many years now, and I've been able to implement David Allen's Getting Things Done system into this app. So Todoist plus Calendar is kind of my personal productivity suite, I would say. And then more recently, I've started using Notion for things where I just need to take notes or create reference data or things like that. For that, I use Notion. I hope that other people, they may want to try these out and they might find these useful.
Thank, thank you, Usman. So, challenges are part of everyday life for everyone. But as a product manager, how do you manage challenges?
Yeah, I think so. I assume we're talking about work challenges, and this is a very broad question, and there are so many things that can be said here. I'm going to try to be very brief and straightforward about a few things that I think that people should keep close to heart. Three things. First one, challenges should be seen as opportunities. And there have been so many times in my life that I've seen something as a problem and it turns out to be a very interesting opportunity. That's kind of like the starting point. I would say that's the that's the framework that one should take. Second is you have a challenge and it looks like a big problem. How do you tackle it? And there's an old saying or some, I don't know who's the original author of this, but somebody said, "How do you eat an elephant?" And the answer is you eat it bit by bit. So what this means is you need to try to break down the problem into smaller pieces and then attack every piece. That's although it sounds very simplistic, but that's one of the most profound advice that I've heard, and it's always been useful, especially when we're talking about challenges and issues in product management. And then the last thing I'll say is you should have a mindset of learning. So you try something. If it fails, you learn. It's not useless. As long as you learn from an experience, it is useful. And so based on that learning, you can then try something different. But don't see failure as failure, see it as a learning point. And so that would be my brief suggestion or advice for dealing with challenges.
So, sticking to challenges, now many people see artificial intelligence as a multi-headed monster or something that can do so many problems. So, what do you feel of in 2030 the state of AI would be? Right now we have ChatGPT and many other things, but in 2030, what do you predict the state of AI will be?
I don't claim to be a psychic, and it's not possible for me to predict the future. Uh, and I think what's really tricky right now is that the recent changes or advancements that have happened in the artificial intelligence industry, particularly around generative AI and conversational AI. And I know everybody's talking about ChatGPT and similar technologies right now. I think it's been it's been such a rapid advancement that, at least for me, it's hard to predict what kind of jobs and what kind of roles are going to be there 10, 15, 20 years from now. What I can say for sure is that the jobs that we have today are definitely going to change. I know there are predictions out there. People are talking about many jobs being eliminated. I saw a figure of 300 million for US somewhere, sorry, global. I don't know that somebody can predict with that kind of accuracy, but there, what I can say is the nature of job is about to change rapidly. So any jobs that involve content writing, for example, or content creation, not just writing, any kind of content creation, I think they are, I wouldn't say at risk per se. They are at risk in some sense, but they're likely to change in how this work happens. Instead of everything being done by a human, now you've got these tools. They can do it much, much faster. And the quality of the output is so good now. So how do the humans use these tools? I think that's still to be decided. It's going to manifest in some way. Um, I do think that there are some bigger shifts happening globally that combined with these changes in the AI industry are going to impact the jobs market overall. So one of the very big changes that is slowly happening over decades is the increasing aged population in many countries and decreasing resources in terms of social security and retirement benefits that are going to be available for that large population. So on one hand, you have these people who are getting older, and mind you, you and me are probably going to be in that category at some point in the future. And the kind of jobs that we're doing today are going to be changed. I know. And at the same time, the kind of benefits that are going to be available through Social Security and through retirement benefits are going to be dwindling, and they are dwindling already. A lot of countries are having problems. I'm sure everybody's aware of what's happening in France recently with the strikes and all. But I think combined with these global trends, there's a very uncertain job market in the future, maybe 10, 20, 30 years ahead. And then I think one of the other trends that I'm seeing is every industry is trying to implement AI in some way. And so in the past, we've heard about companies trying to do digital transformation. So moving from paper-based or manual tasks and tools to digital tools. Now I think companies are talking about the AI transformation. So they may already be very digital in their nature. but they want to use AI to make their work very efficient and move fast and be able to do new things with AI. And so I think we still don't know, but one of the very positive examples is that I've seen is Khan Academy. The way they have started to implement AI tools like ChatGPT, and others into their work, I think that's amazing. So there's some very positive trends that I hope we'll see, but I think there's a lot of uncertainty at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Usman. So let's come to specifically to product managers and AI. Must product managers fear ChatGPT and other similar AI models?
Yeah, that's a great question, Surya. I think the way to I would first of all let me say product managers do not need to worry about ChatGPT. Product managers, their number one job is to figure out what is the most valuable problem to solve for the company, and that is still there, and that's going to be there. So if you're good at that, then you're there. ChatGPT is a content creation tool at best, at this point at least, and I think that product managers should not fear these technologies. They should embrace these technologies. And when I say embrace the technologies, I want you to think in two ways. First, how can you use ChatGPT or any other similar technologies to improve your own productivity and your own personal work, and how you do the work? So that, for example, if you are doing some kind of content creation, let's say maybe you want a tool that easily helps you summarize meeting notes, or you have a user research interview session, and you just use some kind of tool to summarize that quickly. That's going to make you very productive and make you very efficient. So that's like one aspect of it. How can you use these tools to improve your own work? The other aspect I think the product manager should think about is familiarize yourself with how these technologies work, and then figure out in your product or in your company, where does this fit, or does it fit at all? Does it make sense? Is there any value that you can generate for your product or for your company by the use of these kinds of tools? And I'm fairly confident that the generic version of the tool that we see in public is not the one that you can just plug and play for any use case. Again, I'll mention Khan Academy as an example. If you go and see how they've implemented the tool, they've invested a lot of effort into customizing the tool for their particular use case. So there is work to be done if you want to incorporate these technologies into your particular use cases. And so that's where I think product managers should be thinking how to do that. Where does it make sense? And of course, they need to understand, is there a problem that is better solved through these technologies? And is it profitable? Does it make business sense? And also worry about ethical and legal aspects of these things and all that. So I'm very positively thinking about these technologies at that point, and I don't think product managers should be worried about this at all.
Thank you, Usman. So there are several people who want to enter into the product management field. So what will be your advice for a new entrant?
Yes. So the way I entered product management, maybe that's that's one way I can describe how I think one could enter product management and understand this discipline in a good way to start with. That would be if you have the opportunity to work with a very early stage startup, and maybe as part of some incubator program where you have some guidance as well. But the point of that early experience would be that you get a lot of exposure to product discovery techniques, understanding how do you figure out whether you have a problem that is worth solving. So a lot of people, when they are talking about startups, they have some idea, but really, it, you have to think about a problem that you want to solve. So, is there a problem that is worth solving? Who is this problem for? You need to be able to figure that out. So, how do you figure out whether it's a problem that is big enough, that is unavoidable, that is unworkable, and that people are willing to go for a different solution if you're able to come up with a better solution? So figuring out all of those things, I think that's kind of at the core of product management. Yes, there are other pieces of product management like understanding agile methods and Scrum methodologies. You can always do some coursework to familiarize yourself with these tools and these processes. That needs to happen. I think there's a very good reason that teams try to do these Scrum ceremonies and all these things. And I think the product managers should all be familiar with these, be able to conduct these different ceremonies. But I think those are more related to the product delivery part of it. And in the recent years, what I've come to understand is that a lot of startups they sometimes they skip on the product discovery part of it, and I think that's just so critical. That, in my opinion, that's more important than worrying about product delivery too much. So I would suggest to anyone who is interested in product management that they try to find opportunities where they can expose themselves to an ambiguous problem that they can try to figure out a solution for. They try to figure out what's the market for this, what are the specific kinds of customers or personas that are relevant to this problem, and then there's a lot more to learn after that. But I think those would be my starting points.
Okay, thank you, Usman. So now we have discussed a lot about work. So let's come to your personal life. So how do you manage your work and your professional life?
Yeah, that's a very broad question. I think there are so many pieces to this, and that could be a separate discussion in its own. But I'll just mention a few things here. Uh, One is having goals and a clarification about your goals. What do you want to do? I think that's kind of like a starting point for anybody. If you don't have clarity on the goals, then it's going to be difficult to strike a balance in anything. Then, along with the goals, there's the value in building good habits. So, yes, it's important to have goals, but I think it's even more important to have good habits. Uh, and when you talk about work-life balance, we can talk about habits that allow you to spend a certain amount of time with your family, for example, certain amount of time on your work, and how do you break down your week and your day, and having that high level lens on that, that helps. But when you want to do something over and over again, it's very helpful to have habits instead of trying to wing it every time. Third thing I'll say is focus. We all want to do so many things. I know that I've been in that situation, and I frequently find myself in that place where I am excited about 20 different things that I want to do. At work, I also want to spend time with my family. I also want to enjoy something on my own. Want to go for a hike every once in a while. Uh, so the thing to recognize here is you can do anything, but you can't do everything. So you've got to pick and choose, and ultimately it's going to be an exercise in prioritization, and then you would have to go back to your goals and say, okay, these are really the goals I care about, and so that means that I need to focus on particular things. And maybe your focus changes over time. Right now, if you're studying, you're in a master's program, education needs to be your focus, and that's fine. So maybe other things are neglected a little bit. Later, you might change your focus, but you have to have a certain focus, which is intentional. Last thing I'll say is, and this very closely relates to work-life balance, is personal productivity. Mastering personal productivity is very important nowadays. Almost everybody today is a knowledge worker, and that means you have to be very good at defining your work for yourself, and then compartmentalizing it, and understanding how you're going to manage all that work. And one of the most useful methodologies that I've come to use is the getting things done method. This is something that was popularized by David Allen. I would highly, highly recommend his book. The book is called Getting Things Done. And I think that's a system that has helped me manage a large amount of work without getting stressed about it. And I think that could be a separate session, but I'll stop here with that much advice.
Uh, Thank you so much, Usman. You have shared so much wonderful insights about your life and the work, and I'm sure all my viewers are going to benefit a lot from it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Surya. It was a pleasure talking to you.